Tonight, you'll hear the part of his story few folk ever get wind of, a twist so wild it'll make you question who was hero and who was villain. This here's a tale of survival, betrayal, and redemption, and I reckon it's worth your ears. Black Bart wasn't just a thief, he was a gentleman. Dressed in his long coat and bowler hat, he robbed stagecoaches across the California trails without firing a single shot. He left behind rhymes instead of bodies, and though the lawmen hunted him, many of folks secretly admired his clever ways. But on a crisp fall morning in 1881, Bart made a mistake that would change his life. He'd set his sights on a Wells Fargo stage hauling gold from Sonora to Sacramento. His plan was perfect until it wasn't. Hidden among the cargo was a man who wasn't supposed to be there, young Luke, a scrappy bushcrafter hired to protect the shipment. Luke was no ordinary man. Born and bred on the frontier, he had skills that could rival any outlaw's wits. When Bart stopped the coach with his usual charm, demanding the strongbox, Luke sprung from the shadows, catching the outlaw off guard. A scuffle ensued. Bart's pistol clattered to the ground, and for the first time, the highwayman found himself staring down defeat. But Luke, instead of turning him in, made a strange proposition: "Help me cross the Sierra alive, and I'll let you walk away free. Refuse, and it's off to the sheriff." Now, here's where things get interesting. Bart agreed. He didn't have much choice, but he was no fool. He knew the mountains were as dangerous as any noose. Together, the two men set out into the wilds, carrying only the barest essentials. The journey was fraught. Snow fell early that year, blanketing the trail and hiding dangers beneath its icy veil. Bart's polished demeanor began to crack as the cold seeped into his bones, but Luke's bushcraft kept them alive. He taught Bart to trap hares, find water under the snow, and even build a fire in a blizzard. As days turned into weeks, the two men began to talk. Luke learned of Bart's past, how he'd turned to crime not out of greed, but out of desperation. A family back east he could no longer support. The crushing weight of failure. And Bart? He saw something in Luke he hadn't seen in years: raw, unshakable hope. But the real twist came when they reached the edge of the range, where the forest opened into the plains. Waiting for them was Marshal Duggan, a lawman with a grudge against Bart and a silver tongue that could poison any heart. "Good work, Luke," Duggan called out, tipping his hat. "I see you brought me the snake alive." Bart's blood ran cold. Betrayal. He'd trusted Luke, only to be delivered into the hands of his enemy. But Luke didn't hand him over. Instead, he turned his rifle on Duggan. "Bart ain't the villain here," Luke said, his voice steady. "Not today." Turns out, Duggan had hired Luke not to protect the gold, but to bait Bart into a trap. The marshal planned to take Bart's loot for himself, leaving the outlaw and bushcrafter to rot. A tense standoff ensued. Bart, ever the strategist, saw an opportunity. Using the tricks Luke had taught him, he created a diversion, setting fire to a nearby thicket. In the chaos, the unlikely allies escaped, leaving Duggan fuming in their wake. Back in the safety of the plains, Bart and Luke parted ways. The bushcrafter returned to his quiet life in the mountains, and Bart? He disappeared again, leaving behind a final poem carved into the bark of a pine tree. A thief I was, yet learned to give, from a stranger's hand, I found how to live. The West is wild, but hearts can heal, through trust, even outlaws can feel. Years later, folks whispered that Bart hung up his bowler hat for good, settling in a small town under a different name. Some say it was Luke's faith in him that changed his course. So there you have it, friends, a tale of two men who crossed paths in the most unlikely of ways. The frontier's got a funny way of teaching us that not all heroes wear badges. Maybe next time you hear the name Black Bart, you'll think twice about who he really was. If you like this tale and want to hear more stories of the Wild West, hit that subscribe button and join me by the fire again soon. There's plenty more where this came from.